Hi, how's it going? This is Resin of Collinwood, back with the Dark Shadows video for you guys. And what am I doing? I am doing House of Dark Shadows Revisited, the movie, the first motion picture for the Dark Shadows franchise. You know, it's funny, this movie was being done while the series was still going on. You had the 1970 parallel time uh, being done while this movie was being done. So does the movie take anything from the series? Well, there's a lot it takes from the series, really. Before I get into the actual overall movie, and I'm going to get into the characters too. The one thing it definitely takes is it takes a plot. Now, does it take the parallel time plot? No. If you guys are very familiar with the original series, the television series of Dark Shadows, there's a plot where where Maggie Evans is kidnapped by Barnabas, and Barnabas does visit Maggie prior to kidnapping her. He sort of talks to her. Now he's not courting her or dating her, mind you, but he's talking to her. He even requests that her father Sam paint a portrait of him. Um, yeah, I've always joked, yeah, he's going to pay you money, plus he's going to kidnap your daughter. So, but Barnabas in the series does kidnap Maggie Evans, and eventually Maggie Evans escapes. Now, there's sort of what Barnabas is trying to do is turn Maggie into Josette. So they're sort of taking that plot point and applying it to the series. The only real difference is in the movie he's going to perform a wedding. He's actually going to he tells Jeff Clark every wedding needs a witness. It's one of the best lines in the whole goddamn movie. I love that line. Every wedding needs a witness. God, this this also brings a lot of the cast members from the television series to the big screen. So this movie stars Jonathan Frid as Barnabas Collins. Now he's not playing the same adaptation from the series, and I'll get into that. This also stars Maggie Evans. Catherine Lee Scott is Maggie Evans. Catherine's name is Maggie Evans. No, God. Oh my God, what a night. So you have Catherine Lee Scott who plays Maggie Evans. You have uh, Roger Davis who plays Jeff Clark. Again, it's not the same Jeff Clark from the series. It's a different adaptation of Jeff Clark, which I'm going to get into his character here a lot too, because he's the main protagonist. Um, this also has Joan Bennett. She's playing Elizabeth Collins' daughter. This also has Lewis Edmonds. He's playing Roger Collins. This has David Hennessy. He's playing David Collins. Nancy Barrett's playing Carolyn Collins' daughter. Um, Donald Briscoe is in this movie. He's playing her boyfriend. And you have Thayer David. He's playing Professor Stokes. You have Grayson Hall's playing Dr. Julia Hoffman. Again, they're playing slight adaptations of their characters. You have John Carl Lynch playing Willie Loomis. Yes, Dennis Patrick is in this movie, and he's playing Sheriff George Patterson. No Dana Elker for this one. I'll tell you what though, I do give Dennis Patrick credit. I liked his George Patterson in this movie really good. Um, you have Humphrey Allen Alstrado plays the doctor in this movie. No, he does not play a cool ass warlock, but he plays a doctor. So there's that. Now, so what you have here is you have a lot of the again actors from the series who are sort of playing different variations of their parts in the movie. The movie is filmed at the Lyndhurst Estate on the grounds, and it also is there's parts filmed in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. huge shout out to my buddy at / Barnabas Mark Gilman. Huge shout out to him. I'm gonna tag him in this video. Also, um, link to his channel will be in the description box. So I talked about that they were filming dark. They were filming parallel time, the parallel time episodes while this was going on. If you want further insight for that, if you really want to dive deeper into that, because I'm not really going to get into that here on this video, go pick up my buddy Patrick McRae's The Dark Shadows Daybook and read that puppy, because you will gain a lot of insight from that book. Link will be in the description box where you can get it. Huge shout out to him as well. I With this movie, let's start off simple. Let's start off Maggie Evans. Is Kathleen Lee Scott's Maggie Evans in this movie? Is she the same exact Maggie Evans from the series? To me, no. And if you disagree, that's fine. You can. Here's why I say no. The Maggie Evans from the series was sassy. She had no problem talking back. And yes, there is a bit of that Maggie in this movie. This Maggie is a little more, she's this, she is a governess, and she also, well, not only is she a governess, she's a little more humble in this movie to me. She's not like the full tone sassy Maggie Evans we were used to in the series. And I get the feeling too with her character here that she's been a governess, that she's always been a governess. There, what to me, House of Dark Shadows is saying there was no Victoria winners. That's my interpretation of it. If you disagree, please do. Um, I really like her character in this movie. She's easily, it's not it's not hard to like her. She's very likable. She's very relatable. She's somebody who has a job, who's working to teach this kid, who's trying to deal with him and his, not just his attitude, but his family's money. And they're very bossy and very demanding. And they're just not demanding of her. They're demanding of their other employees too, which is going to lead me here into Willie here in a second. But she also has a boyfriend, and Jeff Clark, Roger Davis's character, is her boyfriend in this story. So there's no Joe Haskell, by the way. So there's no Joel Carruthers is not in this movie, which is something. I know. Somebody said he was off doing something else. I forget what. So that's that's the reason he's not in this. Also, I don't. Well, I don't know if they reached out to him or not in this. I'm not sure, but for the role of Maggie's boyfriend, you have Roger Davis playing Jeff Clark. So instead of Jeff Clark being interested in Victoria, he's interested in Maggie. Again, there's no Victoria winners in this movie. That's the one thing I take away from this too with this. So she's looking for David, and she runs across Willie Loomis, who shows her some sort of writing, like I found it, and he's not really making much sense to her. And then Roger, Louis Edmonds' character, comes in and yells at him. To me, I'll say Roger is probably the most similar from the series. Elizabeth too a bit, but again, it's not like all these characters in this movie. Again, you're not going to get a ton of them in this movie because again, the plot point centers around other characters as well. Not saying Elizabeth is an important character in this movie, but compared to Willie and even well, to Maggie and Willie, she's really not in a sense. She has scenes in this movie and a part to play, but I'll get into that now. Louis Edmonds isn't too happy with Willie Loomis. He says, "You need to go help Maggie look for my son." He goes, "Why don't you go look for your son?" So the one thing I'll say here, and this gets into Tubi a bit. Tubi in the description box says Willie Loomis a handyman, that he drifts into town. Number one, Willie Loomis is brought into town with Jason McGuire. He doesn't just happen into Collinsport or drift into town of his own accord. No. He's brought into town with Jason McGuire. Jason McGuire is that's the thing too. Though Dennis Patrick is in this movie, there's no Jason McGuire in this movie. Willie Loomis is this how much different is this Willie Loomis compared to the Willie Loomis from the series? This Willie Loomis from the series has been working for the Collins family ever since he's been there. So he's not somebody who just showed up one day. He's been working for them. And what you get is you get a disgruntled employee. And that's what he really is. He's disgruntled. He's not happy. He's working for this wealthy family. He wants out. So he finds some writing that's going to lead him into a secret, passage to find some jewels. He's not necessarily going to find jewels. He's going to find vampire Barnabas Collins. Yes, they're sort of taking a bit from the series. They're not exactly. They're not taking the exact thing that happened from the series because keep in mind in the series, Willie is actually looking into the Collins family legend of Naomi Collins, and that I think that's what we're led to believe, though, with the movie. If anyone wants to correct me on that, please do. But I do believe they're sort of hinting that Willie's already looked into the legend of Naomi, and that's how he got the sheet of paper. But because Barnabas actually does mention his mother by name in this movie when he shows Elizabeth the jewels. This belonged to Naomi Collins, which was the original Barnabas' mother, which is him. Um, so Willie lets out Barnabas, and as this is going on, you have Maggie, who's sort of been, you know, stuck in the old house by David, and Roger, Roger Davis, Jeff Clark comes and rescues her, and he tells her it wasn't David. David's been at Collinwood for a while, so I caught him in his room, caught him in his room, and so again you have all these characters so far in play. You also you also find out that Daphne, as she's getting ready to leave, when she leaves, she's walking down this long road to her car. She hears the howling. You sort of see somebody walking through the woods. It's obviously Jonathan Fred as Barnabas, but he attacks her and grabs her. You don't see who it is. I love how they're doing this like a mystery. Even though if you're a Dark Shadows fan, you know who it is. But they're not just placating to the Dark Shadows fans here. They're placating to a general audience. Hey, let's keep them guessing on who this might be. Which I don't mind them doing that. I mean, hey, why not? If you can get away with it, get away with it. Um, so he grabs Daphne and he, bites or chokes her. Daphne's laid up for a while. You have, uh, what I love here is I love when Jeff Clark finds her, Daphne, Daphne. It's like, dude, can you not see this? This woman's like out of it. Like Roger Davis is like Daphne, Daphne. That always makes me laugh. I don't know why. Um, and obviously people talk about Daphne being attacked. Carolyn, who's on a date with, Don Briscoe's character. I forget his name. I want to say it's Shaw in this. I could be wrong. I do believe it's either Shaw or Drake. I forget which, so I apologize. My memory's slipping. But as they're on this date, you notice that there's a man with an onyx ring sitting at the table with Willie. Willie's filling in Barnabas about what's gone on ever since he's been in the coffin, which I like. I love this scene at the Blue Whale. It's really well done. I love the bar they're at is to me represents the Blue Whale. That's my takeaway. I could be wrong, but that's my takeaway. Don Briscoe's character and Carolyn's character is Carolyn. Because I want to touch upon this. Is Carolyn's character the Carolyn from the series? No, absolutely not. And let me explain why I say this. Carolyn from the series was a wild child. I mean, a free spirit in every sense of the word. In many ways, prior to Quentin Collins, she's the female Quentin Collins in a way. minus the werewolf. She's a very free spirit, and she has no problem flirting with men and dating men and wanting to get with them. But you know, she's not really trying to tie herself down to one man in the series, even though Joe Haskell's interested in her. But let's be honest, who wouldn't Joe marry? I mean, he's desperate. Come on, but in the series, so again, in the series, Carolyn isn't really trying to marry, even though her mother's trying to force it upon her. In this, she is trying to marry. She's in love with Don Briscoe's character. They are in love with one another. So you do get the sense of this woman's more committed to wants to be committed to this man than anything else. Which is a nice, even though they're briefly together, you get that sense, which I love. The again, what House of Dark Shadows does really well, even though it's taken, the actors from the series and it's taken a storyline from the series, it doesn't try to necessarily be the series in a sense. It's not trying to rip directly from the series or copy it and paste it in front of it for a movie sense. It is trying to tell you that these characters are different in their own right. And that's something I really, as a fan, I really appreciate because it's all too easy to just rip off what you already did or just copy and paste what you already did. But they're not necessarily just trying to do that here. They are trying to tell their own sort of story version of events. And again, take actors who are playing the namesake characters and make them different. Is Elizabeth and Roger different? Again, you don't get the history of Paul Stoddard here, so I would say probably yes. Also, you don't get the mention of Laura Collins in this story. And again, so I would say yes. David Hennessy's David Collins, is he the same David from the series? That's a pretty tough one because he does play some pranks and some tricks. He's very, to me, I would say no because to me, David Hennessy's David Collins in the movie is more of an actual kid. Is more of a kid who's just free loving, loves to play pranks and play tricks and play games. He again, he's more of a normal child. He's not talking to ghosts. He's not talking to spirits. He's not picking up telephones and listening to David Selby to come to the West Wind. But he's really not. So he is very much a young kid who loves to play games. So I love that here. And now enter nightfall comes. Enter Jonathan Fritz, Barnabas Collins. So he comes to Collinwood and he rings the doorbell. They let him in. The maid goes and gets somebody, and here comes Lewis Edmonds, and he goes, if I wouldn't have believed it, So you see the portrait of Barnabas Collins, and you see Jonathan Fred, and they're talking about the resemblance, like Elizabeth did with Jonathan in the series. So that right there is right there taken from the series most of all, the resemblance of the portraits. Now, is is this Barnabas Collins the Barnabas Collins from the series? Is it the same character? It has the same namesake, eh, but not the same character. And I think you know where I'm going with this. And if you do, great. And John, there's a line in this movie that me and my buddy Mark Gelman, we were debating, and I think I had asked Christine Pierce and Cara Tillies this when we had done all three Dark Shadows movies, and I'll ask this of you guys too. There's a line in this movie where Barnabas says, when they put this curse on me. He clearly says, when they put this curse on me. So, and keep in mind, by this time this happens, Carolyn has been bitten and stuff. So, Barnabas says the word they. He does not say her. He does not say a woman. He doesn't say Angelique. This is not somebody who's making a clear. This isn't somebody who's making a mistake or making an error. This isn't a goof up in the movie. This isn't or better yet, this isn't a character who's messing up on what they're saying. They're very clear on what they're saying. They put this curse on me. So, and it leads to the question, who are they? And there have been some really cool theories and suggestions out there, and I hope to hear you guys'. I don't want to give everybody's suggestions away because I feel that some people might just copy those. But what's you guys' suggestion? Who in House of Dark Shadows? Who's they? I've heard somebody was saying to me a while back ago that they were going to reveal it as Angelique put the curse on him, but to me that makes no sense if they do. How do you substitute her for they? I mean, you could say, well, Barnabas never knew exactly. I don't. I wouldn't buy that if they had said that. If they had actually did a sequel with Jonathan or gotten a sequel with Jonathan with this movie, and they tried to sell you that he was mistaken about it. He didn't exactly know who it was or was mistaken about who it was. I don't think I could buy that. I really, really don't. But because he seemed very certain who they were. He said when they put this curse on me. He knew who they were. He just didn't say their names. So there's that. But early before that, they're throwing a costume party, and in the great house, obviously in Collinwood. This isn't being done in the old house. Um, which, by the way, the real old house by this time had burned down, so which sucks. Also, at the party is where Carolyn, gets bit by Barnabas, and he mingles. Barnabas mingles with Maggie Evans. He's pretty much flirting with Maggie Evans right in front of her boyfriend, Jeff Clark. And I'll get back to this as part of what are my two issues with this movie, because the movie's very entertaining and it's fun to watch. So obviously, Barnabas bites Carolyn, who's sort of watching him sort of flirt with Maggie in front of her. She's not happy. She also comes to the old house later, and that's where, I've talked about where Barnabas has a conversation with Willie, and Barnabas sort of yells at her and hates her. Carolyn's character does get killed off by Barnabas, but she's going to come back as a vampire because he completely drained her of her blood, and obviously they're going to stake Carolyn with a a wooden stake, which is a really cool scene. My favorite sequence in this whole movie is the funeral sequence. God, you have Reverend Trask just uh the words. My God, he does such a good Jerry Lacey again from the original Dark Shadows. He gets put in this movie as Trask, and his eulogy and his delivery is gold. I mean, beautiful. But obviously, Carolyn comes back from the grave. Um, they end up staking her. I love the pool sequence with her and David Hennessy. That was really well done, really well shot, really creepy. I love David falling. Also, this sort of sends Elizabeth down a dark and bad road because she can't believe her daughter came back to life as a vampire. It means there's a vampire out there. People trying to figure out who it is, and obviously the girl they stake Carolyn because of Don Briscoe's character had went to the tomb. He got bit. And you could tell he really loved that character. He really loved that girl. I love the again the acting in this is really really well done by the original cast of the movie. Again, the movie's well acted. That it's very very well acted. There's nothing wrong with it at all. And the scene setting and the way the location is beautiful to look at, and it gets just amazing. Um, so where was I? Okay, so Doctor after they say Carolyn, Professor Stokes and company, you have Doctor Hoffman who begins, who at the party they had suspected Barnabas of being a vampire, couldn't see his reflection in the mirror. she confronts him finally, and she says she could help him. So she starts giving him like blood transfusions and treatments and stuff to cure him. And she does it for no, she does do it for notification, like she did in the series initially. But in the series, I had asked Christine Pearson Caratelli's when did Dr. Hoffman fall in love with Barnabas when she said, she said, "Bite me, Barnabas," and he didn't want to do it because he knew what that meant, he knew what that was like. And I do find it interesting that in the movie, she falls in love with Barnabas very quickly. And Barnabas is so foolish he doesn't even realize it because his sights are so set on Maggie because she's a reincarnation of Josette, obviously. Um, is Dr. Julia Hoffman's character the same character from the series? Now, Dr. Hoffman did portray Barnabas, did try to poison him. I would I would more say somewhat, but not exactly the same, type of Dr. Hoffman. Because keep in mind, Dr. Hoffman, she wasn't stationed in Collinsport. Remember, she had to be brought in by Dr. Dave Woodard. They had to send Maggie to Wincliffe to get treated by Dr. Julia Hoffman, who was a psychologist. And they don't really get into the psychology part here. They get into the science and the actual doctoring. So I don't think, to me, this is not the same Julia Hoffman from the series. Is this the same Professor Woodard, Professor, God, Professor Stokes? He was a Van Helsing character, in a sense, Van Helsing in a series. To me, he is more Van Helsing in this movie because Van Helsing always wanted to destroy the vampire. So he literally is Van Helsing in this movie. He is one of this is gonna and this is gonna lead me into my I guess one of my issues. I I like Roger Davis as Jeff Clark in the series, Pete, aka Peter Bradford, because he's very heroic by defending Vicky. He's a very well written character. So here's one of my issues with House of Dark Shadows, and I'm sorry to tackle this now, but I have to. I do not love Roger Davis's Jeff Clark as a protagonist in this movie. He just, and again, I don't think this is the writers dumbing him down or anything, but okay, you're telling me this guy who clearly saw clear as day this other man, this Barnabas Collins, flirt with his girlfriend, and he's just like he's dismissive of it in a sense to the point of he doesn't ask Barnabas, "Hey, why are you making moves on my girl?" Yet here's Barnabas Collins who asks this guy to work for him, and he gets him a higher paying job, and yet Jeff Clark does not raise one eyebrow Barnabas's direction. Now you're going to tell me this guy is going to stake a bunch of vampires. He's going to stake Professor Stokes. He's going to stake Roger Collins. It's just like I just feel the way the protagonist is written. Look, as a protagonist, what's the word I'm looking for? He's serviceable, but they needed a better protagonist for this story. And I do feel I know this is gonna sound nuts. I would have went with Fair David. He's your Van Helsing. He's more of a leader in this movie than what Roger Davis is. I mean, he has every to me he had a leading man quality. I get some people are say, well, his age, look, I don't think it was his age. I just, again, uh, I don't know why he wasn't made the hero instead of Jeff Clark. I just feel Jeff Clark is not a great protagonist in this movie. Really, and do they try to build sympathy for him? They try to build sympathy for him by doing action sequences where he's killing Professor Stokes, who's a vampire. He's killing Roger, who's a vampire. So he's killed two vampires. Now he goes to where Barnabas and Maggie are to be married. And let me say this too: in the series, Barnabas Collins did not court Maggie Evans. So, but in the movie, he does, which I find interesting. Again, I don't think they were trying to copy and paste the series because they were trying to be different. Here's Barnabas who literally did go on dates with Maggie Evans because Dr. Hoffman's treatments were working in the movie. They sort of were working in the series, but you don't get to see him work until after 1795 and until uh, Dr. Eric Lang shows up and he begins his own experiment. So, which is really interesting. So there's that, and there's no Dr. Eric Lang in this, by the way. There is that. So there's no Dr. Lang. So he's been seeing Maggie. Finally, after Willie being beaten, Professor Stokes going over and seeing, he confronts Julia. You're helping him. Vampirism is not a disease, Julia. He killed Carolyn, and he sort of grills it into her head. Finally, because she he doesn't realize how she was feeling for him, and when he finally realizes it's a little too late, and he just he she intentionally gives him a bad injection, which causes him to go old, kill her. This puts Liz in a catatonic state for good. It you have Maggie Evans who's laying in bed with crosses. You have cops. Finally, the real truth is revealed that Barnabas is the vampire. He's been the vampire this whole long. So you have here's where the movie really gets intriguing for me. You have Thayer David, who's not a vampire yet. You have Lewis Edmonds, who's not a vampire yet. And no, I'm not expecting Lewis Edmonds to be the vampire yet. You know what? If you didn't want to make Professor Stokes the protagonist because of the Van Helsing comparison, then by God, why not make Dennis Patrick? Because Dennis Patrick does do a lot too here with these scenes. And to me, I don't know. I'm not again. I'm not the biggest Jeff Clark fan of this movie. I don't think it makes the movie bad. I don't think it doesn't drag the movie, but I just only from a protagonist standpoint, to me he's only exceptional. He's not a great protagonist. He's good. He's exceptional, but he's not great. He's not I don't consider him a threat to Jonathan Fritz Barnabas is what I'm trying to say. I more consider, Dennis Patrick's or Thayer David's character threats to Barnabas, but not to be here in this movie because what happens is there David gets turned into a vampire, Roger gets turned into a vampire. It doesn't really explain what happened to Sheriff Patterson, so um, whether he got turned or he just went off looking in a different direction, we don't know. You never see him be turned, so I guess that's a comforting fact. Or not, because who knows, maybe he's just dead. There is that. I know that. So the ending of this movie, you see, they're at Barnabas is getting ready to marry Josette. Willie tells Jeff, like, just don't interfere. It's too late. I love how Willie Loomis jumps in front of Barnabas as Jeff Clark's gonna stake him. Willie takes the crossbow. I love this. And Fred, you will come to me. What a line. Again, this is a really entertaining movie. You will not get bored of this movie. I'll get to my other issue of this movie here in a minute. So you have finally Barnabas does get staked by Willie. Yes, by Willie. Then Jeff Clark, great assist. This frees Maggie Evans. House of Dark Shadows, ladies and gentlemen. I've always given this movie a 7 out of 10. Rob Zombie said this movie is a very underrated vampire movie. He's right, it is underrated. I've given you my one issue. I don't love the protagonist. She's not very strong to me. My only real other issue with this movie, and it's small really, is the fact that they did take from the series from a story plot. I sort of wish they would have came up with their own plot about Barnabas here in this movie. Again, I do feel they tried to make things their own. I do give them an A for effort. Again, this movie is very entertaining from start to finish. If you have not seen House of Dark Shadows, I highly recommend it. My favorite movie is going to be discussed tomorrow. Wait, what? Yeah. Which will be Thursday night, which will be later tonight because I just realized it's already Thursday now. So Thursday night, late Thursday night. I'll be discussing Night of Dark Shadows. That's my favorite one. House of Dark Shadows is a good movie. Again, 7 out of 10. I do feel this movie, it doesn't drag. None of these movies. I'll say this: none of the movies drag. Not none of them. Um, did I like the score of this movie? Yes, but this movie is not reliant on its score the way the next movie is. Again, the score is good in all three films, but I'm going to explain to you why Night of Dark Shadows is probably, to me, the best score out of all three movies. And second behind that would probably be 2012's Dark Shadows. That has the second best score. House would come in third for scores. But this movie here is going to come in second for me, and you'll find out why tomorrow night. Um, why I put Night of Dark Shadows above this. Again, I've given you my two biggest issues. The protagonist, I don't feel is that strong. I feel they could have had a better protagonist in this movie. I don't have any real issues with Roger Davis being in this movie. I just wish they'd have given him a different role or made his character a little tougher here. I feel they could have did something different with the character of Jeff Clark. Um, Again, though, too, they're trying to make his character different from the series too, or different enough. And I get it. I really do. Um, by the way, Humford Allen Ostrada's doctor character takes over for Dr. Julia Hoffman. Oh my God. Old Man Barnabas in this movie is awesome. Shout out to my buddy Mark Gilman. Old Man Barnabas. That is amazing. The makeup is amazing in this movie. The effects of it are cool. Um, but definitely 7 out of 10 for this movie. It is worth a watch. Go check out House of Dark Shadows, where the vampires know how to do it. You guys have a good night.